So hi and welcome to Quanta's Roundtable for International Women's Day. I'm Emma, Head of Corporate Communications for Quanta, and I'm joined by four brilliant, incredible women from across the business. So please, could you all introduce yourselves? I'm going to start with you, Bev.
Hi, I'm Bev Aubrey and I'm an investment analyst with Copia.
And then Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie Hall. I'm Commercial Director for Wealth Time.
And Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Holder. I'm Group People Director for Quanta.
And now finally, Kylie.
I'm Kylie Clark, the Customer Experience Director for Wealth Time.
Brilliant, thank you. So this is obviously for International Women's Day. We're all obviously working in the financial industry. So my first question is, how did we all get into the financial industry? So I'll go to Elizabeth first.
I think for me, I ended up in the financial industry purely because I'm from outskirts of London, and everyone knows when you work, live near London, you end up thinking, right, I'm going to go into the city and I'm going to get a job in a bank and I'm going to, So I think it was a bit of an assumption as I was growing up and studying, and for me, it was always the people element. So I wasn't focus on going into the financial industry. I think as long as I could work in the people space, but as it goes, I have been in insurance, accountancy, etc. So I have always ended up in that spot.
Amazing. Kylie, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know about the rest of you, but I never thought that I would go and work in financial services. It wasn't something that I dreamt of when I was a little girl. But for me, once I realised the scale of influence that we have and responsibility in this sector in particular, it just felt like a place that I could really make a difference. And I kind of fell into it 20 years ago in wealth management, and I just really love it because we can make a difference to people's lives, their investments, their children's education. So that's why I joined.
Excellent, thanks. What about you, Bev?
So after having my kids, I took quite a few years out, and then after about 5-6 years began to work for the family business, where I created a pension scheme and ran the investments. From there, I decided to take my qualifications, so I took my exams with an aim to try and enter the industry by the time my youngest went to secondary. So I joined the CISI mentorship scheme, where I was lucky enough to get an amazing female mentor who encouraged me to go to the networking events, where I met Joanne Benson, who was head of investments at Copia at the time, and she invited me to interview. And here I am.
You are. And then finally, we've got Sophie.
Yeah, so I joined the industry many moons ago, and I came actually from my parents were farmers, where there was never an equality issue. My mother did the same as my father, and it never occurred to me that women couldn't do the same as men, because that's all I'd seen growing up. When I joined financial services, I could see a career trajectory, but it seemed to me that it was an industry that was very heavily male dominated. And those who know me do know I like a challenge. And having seen the industry and seen the challenge, I thought I'm up for that. So let's give it a go. And here I am, many moons later.
And I think that's a really good point. It is a male-dominated industry, and we do see that. But so in terms of International Women's Day, do you see that as a positive initiative, especially for our sector? I'm going to go to Elizabeth first for this one.
I really do see it as a positive initiative, and it's not about the the LinkedIn posts or anything like that. I think it creates meaningful conversation. It we can talk about the gender pay gap, and it influences the people policies that we create in my team that are focused on parents and flexibility. So it's all part of that influence and just making a bit of noise, and I think that's okay. I think that's good.
Excellent. What about you, Kylie?
suppose for me, investment decisions primarily historically used to be made by men, and we're seeing a lot more women now in that advice space, a lot more women that are either giving that advice, managing investments, particularly like yourself, Bev, and making those key decisions. And I think for me, about having that balanced representation in our industry is really important. So having International Women's Day gives us a platform, for want of a better term, to be able to talk about those sorts of things. So yeah, I think it is important.
What about you, Bev?
Yeah, I suppose being fairly new into the industry, I was really surprised at how underrepresented we are as women. I thought we would have moved on a bit more by now. So it was a bit of a shock. So having the International Women's Day just highlights that that's still the case, and encourages recognition that the different skills that we bring, because I do think we are made up differently, it is just a positive. And if businesses can recognise that diversity of skill range is advantageous, that can only benefit.
Yeah, definitely. And then Sophie, how do you view International Women's Day?
I think it's great to have a day that's recognised globally, the same day each year, and women throughout different locales around the globe are experiencing different things, and to be able to look across the globe and think some people are ahead, some people are struggling to get equality where they are. I think it's great to have something that internationally unites women worldwide.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm going to follow that up to you as well, Sophie, because how do we kind of communicate to women that financial services is an industry for women? I mean, and I think actually thinking about how do we explain to young women and girls that actually financial services is a good career for them?
Financial services has so many different strands to it. And I think being able to articulate what those different opportunities are is really important. And also to show how far people have come. When I joined the industry, years and years ago, it was a completely different scene that we were entering into. Some of the activities that used to go on would make your hair stand on end these days. That was considered the norm. And I think, to Kylie's point about more and more women getting involved in financial investments, decision making, we've got clear women leaders now. And, you can't be what you can't see. And to have really strong leaders and to be able to help women enter this industry and say, there is something for everybody here. There really is diversification of role for all sorts of capabilities and nuances. I think it's probably one of the industries that has such a vast range of things people can join and enter.
Yeah, no, definitely. What about you, Kylie? What do you think?
I think touching on that, I totally agree with Sophie. I think for me, the industry has changed, not probably as much as we would have liked it to, and Bev, more to your point as well, but I think there's more entry points and more opportunities in career paths in financial services than there was 20 years ago when I first joined. But more importantly, there's more role models than ever before, particularly female role models. I didn't have any female role models when I joined. Now I can pick and choose. There's mentors, and it's not just across in our business, but across the industry as well. On LinkedIn, we've got social media now where we can connect with people. But I think it's more about a message that if you're curious and if you're capable, this is an industry for you, because Elizabeth, you talked about it. There's more empathy and focus on leadership skills in the financial services sector than I think there was before. It was very much driven about investment performance. A little bit of that old boys club, for want of a better term, how we're doing deals on the golf course. Now it's really something it's a conscious thought in our heads about how do we make this better and for our people, but also for the business.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then Elizabeth, I guess there's a slightly different angle for you, but how do we recruit more women into the industry? Is there, more of a is there a different way of recruiting women or showing the different roles that are available for them?
Yeah, I think it's definitely about demonstrating the breadth and depth of the roles that we have, and they're not all about numbers, which can be an assumption from the outside. I mean, my role, for example, is way more about people and how things play out, and supporting and all of those things. So it's about people seeing how the different options that are available to them, and how do they get in, how do they get that taster of what it's like. So I know that we've just started our rotation program for trainees within Wealth Time. So that's an example of those entry points that we can really open up to females and see, so they can get a taste of different departments and really go where their skills and passions lay.
Yeah, excellent. And then Bev, you're at Copa, you're obviously investment heavy. I mean, is there a way that we can really encourage women and young girls to get into investing? Because that seems to be a brilliant career for them.
Yeah, I mean, in my role, I get a lot of exposure to many fund managers, right? There are very, very few female fund managers, but they all perform amazingly. So we seem to have the skill there, and we're missing that balance, especially at that level. But when I came in, it was scary, but I turned it around and looked at the fact that there are so few women. It's actually an advantage in that you're more memorable. You almost tick a box to make up the numbers, and you're more approachable. So you got to turn it around and make it an advantage. And I do think that my age probably has helped me, but I think it's harder for the younger ones. They do find it intimidating, right? But if they realise that we're all only human, and actually there are an awful lot of men that value women as equal, and I think there's a misconception a bit about that. That message needs to get across to the younger cohort.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And I'm going to stay with you, Bev, because my next question is do you think you've faced any barriers as being a woman in the industry?
No, not yet. I'm not saying I won't. And actually, to Sophie's point, I think, if we wound back to the 80s, it would be completely different. We have, while we're underrepresented, we've definitely moved on a lot since those days. So no, I don't. And, I've been very fortunate to have really strong female roles and mentors, but I've also had some very strong and encouraging male mentors. So that's I've been quite lucky.
That same question to you, Kylie. Have you found it?
I wouldn't say that I've faced barriers. I think I've been really fortunate in the last 20 years since coming into wealth management that I've had supporters that have helped me progress my career. I think the main issue for me was being underestimated, coming in and I felt that there was a level of that concern or needing to prove my capability, probably more so than others. But it's about developing those relationships, those allies, those mentors that we've all talked about. And they help you build those first steps into building that confidence and your reputation. So for me, it was just, I felt a little bit underestimated at times, but not real barriers, particularly, I would say less in the UK than I probably felt in Australia. I think there is a very big difference there. Very big difference.
Interesting. Yeah, and how about you, Sophie? Underestimated?
Probably when I joined the industry, it really was very, very male dominated, and there was an assumed position that it would be men sat on board in C-suite roles, and women were very much supporting. So you'd have a layer of male management at the top, but the next layer down was all women.
Yeah.
And I used to say, they're all the doers and all the sayers. And I think, we've definitely penetrated that. I think what I always wanted to do, and I worked in really large distribution organizations, sales organizations. So I'm talking, 5,000, predominantly male sales, I'd say. And so being able to demonstrate what you could do, and I wanted to be in every meeting almost at that time. I remember feeling androgynous. I didn't want anyone to think whether I was male or female. I wanted them to listen to the content of what I had to say and to see if that added value, and to measure me on the contribution I made. And at that time, you did go to extremes. If somebody commented on the way I looked, I think, I don't want you to do that. I want you to listen to what I've got to say, because it was really important then to set, a standard and say, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to contribute. And it's fantastic to see how things have evolved and how they have changed. And I see this as a really positive industry to work in, and one that really has embraced women working in it. And it's fantastic to see.
Brilliant, thank you. And then finally, Elizabeth.
It might be slightly different for me because people HR space is predominantly female. So I don't feel that I've faced any barriers. But if I'm honest, if I've ever got a slight feeling that there is a barrier or is there something there, I just ignore it and just take up space and make noise and just do what I think is right. So I kind of refuse to acknowledge them. That's my strategy.
But that's what we want to empower people to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a certain level of
Sophie's
confidence required to do that. Yeah,
I think it's Sophie's point. If you can't see it, you can't be it. And when we see people like yourself in there who are saying, "I'm just not wearing that," or Sophie sort of sitting there saying, "No, that's you just need to listen to what I'm saying, not look at how I'm saying it or who's saying it." That sort of stuff, that sort of advice, that sort of approach to perceived barriers, it's really important for us as women in leadership to be able to help those people that are less confident, help them on that journey.
Yeah, I think it's really important we don't look for barriers or assume that they're there. I think that's probably, I would definitely advise against that. As a female was to build their career, and don't look for it. Don't assume it's there. Go in, add value, know your worth. And if something comes up, have your network that you can go to and you can lean on. But don't go in assuming that that's there, because I've been within this business for about a year, and I haven't come across it. It's not always there. So I think it's a balance to strike.
Definitely. I think that comes on really neatly to my next question, which is how can so what would our advice be to younger women within the organisation to reach those senior roles? How do we think that the way of reaching kind of the higher echelons of the business?
I think mentorship programs are really, good idea. I've done mentoring for years now, and I do feel, being able to speak to another woman who's gone through your path is really, really helpful, and to be really open and honest. I think all of us around this table have got a wealth of experience in different roles from different companies and organizations, to be able to really help support and coach other women within this business to succeed.
I think for me, it's like there's a couple of things there. It's about building that culture, that environment where it's that ambition is supported. So as we talked about the rotational development program, but flexible leadership styles, we don't all have to be clones of each other. We don't all have to be these strong, powerful, shoulder pad wearing women that are in the business, that sort of stuff. I'm showing my age a bit there, but and so it's that part which is creating that environment, but then there's that visibility. So stuff like what we're doing here today, things, social media campaigns, talking about things on LinkedIn, attending events, you know, really getting out there and having those conversations. That's because they're all on social media now, right? It's a really powerful space to be in. So it's creating our internal environment, but also showing them that we're available, we're here as role models.
Yeah, I think role models are key, and any kind of mentorship is a positive. What I've seen in this side of the industry is the younger cohort. They really lack the confidence, and they seem to have either they have a misconceived idea, or I do, that they aren't taken seriously. Because of the male dominance. You know, quite often we can walk into a room and there'll be 30 people sat around the table, and, you know, being the only female in the room when you're 20 something is quite a scary thing. So I think that us women need to take the lead in showing them that you are just as valued, you are just as equal. So that role model, I think, is essential for the younger cohort.
That's brilliant. And then Elizabeth, have you got anything to add to that one?
I think if I was going to give advice to a younger female who is just starting out, I would say, be yourself. It's way too much energy and effort to try and fit a mold, and actually you just don't need to, and it will just cause so much fatigue and stress in the long term. Be unapologetically yourself. I'd also say feedback is a gift, and if someone is willing to take the time to sit you down and maybe let you know how something could have landed differently, or just share, take that, be open, and just realize that person wants you to be successful. So I always find that very beginning of people's careers, feedback can always feel quite, you know, people can be quite defensive, but actually if the intentions of the person giving it to you are right, and you've had that, you know who they are and you know they want you to be successful, that's really a gift. So take up space, be yourself, take control of your career. Don't sit and do your work and just hope that all these opportunities are going to come. No, network, you know, see what's going on, get involved in those sort of CSR activities or anything else that's going on that just means you meet other people from other departments. So just all of those things. And what is define your success? What is success to you? And success and happiness are not the same thing, right? And we have to kind of go, where do I want to get to? And we don't all have to get to the top. That isn't always success. Go where you want to go, and have that balance that you want to have. And you know, I'm quite aware of that as a working, you know, parent of two young girls, and you know, there's this balance to be struck. So define your own success. Don't let what other people's success, what they define as success, be yours, because it's not the same. It's very individual.
I think for me, one of the best pieces of advice that I got, and this is very early days in my career, not in financial services, it's when I joined the police actually, and that one of my old sergeants said to me, don't wait until you feel that you're ready. You know, you rarely ever feel ready, and it's not to be confused with if you don't think you're ready. But if you don't feel you're ready, it's not always a good indicator. So don't wait for that. Just jump on in, have a go. You know. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I've read a study around that actually, and that is a major difference between us women and the men. They will go for a job that they know they're probably not ready for, whereas we want to have every box ticked before we will make the leap. And I think just pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone just proves to yourself that you know you can do it and you're just as capable. I think that's a big message, is going outside of your comfort zone.
That's really good. I'm going to stay with you, Bev. Is there anyone that's inspired you in your career? No, you mentioned Joanne.
Yes, actually, my mentor. So I was really fortunate that the CISI sort of developed this mentorship scheme literally as I was doing my exam. So it almost felt like fate. And it was a bit like a dating app where you kind of say what you're looking for and they put what they're able to offer and it matches you up. And we were a perfect match because she hadn't entered the industry in a traditional way either. So for someone like myself who's a bit older, I'm not sort of, your grad fresh out of uni, I didn't look like the normal applicant. And she'd entered through a different way as well. So she just managed to be able to turn all of my concerns and anxieties into a positive and just encouraged me, especially in networking. I think that's a really big key in this industry is networking. So yeah, she inspired me and I'm very grateful to her.
How about you, Kylie?
I had a manager who, and it was a male, wasn't a female, but he believed in me before I did. One of the things that he used to do was positively challenge me on some of my key decisions, and that helped me define my approach going forward about my decision-making approach, any of the key decisions that I was making just about my career or even in business and even in role. So that was really important for me because it is practice. You need to be practiced at handling those objections or challenges, but it was done in such a positive way that it really helped. And he also said to me, define your brand. What is your brand? Not your company's brand, but what do you stand for as an individual? And it lends itself, Elizabeth, to a little bit of what you were talking about was, what does my success look like? What does my happiness look like? What does my brand look like? Who am I? How do I want to be seen? How do I want to be known? How do I want my reputation to come across? And a lot of that feeds very much into some of the stuff that we do from a marketing perspective. We're not just marketing our business, we're marketing our people, which I think is great. I love seeing that. So we need to keep doing that.
Lovely. How about you, Sophie?
Yeah, well, and talking to something that both Elizabeth and Kylie said, I had a mentor, oh my God, 20 odd, maybe 30 years ago, who
10
I was
10
really,
years ago, just say 10.
I know, yeah, but who I was really ambitious, and I had this whole career path lined up that by the time I was 40, I was going to be a director of a UK financial services company, and she basically told me to get a grips. And it was what I needed, the feedback to say, calm down, cool your jets. You're going to, burn yourself out. You're going to be obnoxious. And if you carry on that way, and actually there is a better way to do it. She was a divisional manager. And we're still in contact to this day. We still talk. She still inspires me. And she was just someone that took me to one side and said, I can see the ambition, but actually you need to be, to Elizabeth's point, your authentic self, because that wasn't me. I thought I had to be somebody. And actually, once you had that conversation and that real hard truth feedback, life got a lot better. It was hard work still, but it just, sometimes you just need somebody to go, whoa, hold on a moment, let's just have a chat. And she made a massive difference to my career, and she's, a really good friend now.
Okay. And then finally, Elizabeth.
Yes, I had a previous manager where I worked before, who recruited me, and then I worked for on and off in different roles within a firm, and she was just so inspiring because she was unapologetically herself. But she showed great empathy, and she could also pick up when people weren't okay. And even though she was so busy, you always knew that she could read what was going on, and she showed a lot of care for people, whether that be feedback and honesty, or whether that just be space to say, I know that you're not okay. And actually those skills are so underrated and so hard to share on a CV when you're applying for a job. But that's when you could make people feel truly comfortable, and she made me feel comfortable, and that's when you get the best out of people, and we know that for a fact. So yes, and we're very good friends still today. So like you Sophie, but when you see someone, you go, wow, that's how to do it. You're a leader. You're clear, you're vocal, you're adding value, but you're also really kind. And also, you know, when people might just need a little bit of leeway, and you can see that as well. And I just love that about her.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. So I'm going to have my final question now. So if you could have dinner with 3 inspirational women, dead or alive, who would they be and why? I'm going to go to Bev first.
Okay. I did put a bit of thought into this, actually. So my first choice would be a lady called Mary Read, who was a pirate in the 1700s. She spent her whole life from being a child, where her mum disguised her as a boy, to being a girl, to being a boy, to being a girl, adapting to her circumstances. And she's, very inspirational for her bravery and resilience, and, being able to adapt. So when she was a pirate, she was arrested. So she's like, I'm actually a woman and I'm pregnant. So that avoided being executed. And I just think she's very smart and would be very interesting. My second choice is Joanna Lumley. I've always admired her. And the reason for choosing her is that she's got it all. She's elegant and she's beautiful and adventurous, and she's sharp and intelligent, and she's incredibly funny. And she did an awful lot of campaigning for the Gurkhas, and does a lot for animal rights, etc. So I just think she's all round and would be incredibly entertaining. And then my third choice is Dame Inga Beale, who was the first CEO of Lloyd's of London. She got that job in 2014. And if you listen to her, she will talk about how she always felt different. Even as a child, she was the middle of 3, had a different colour hair to her siblings, and she was in a relationship with a man, and then a relationship with a woman, and then went back to a relationship with a man, and she felt this exclusion from different sides throughout her life. But it wasn't until she went to Australia, where she worked for the BBC and actually worked for a female manager who didn't try and fit in, who was just herself, and she found that inspiration to be who she is, and unapologetically, as you say, Elizabeth, and ended up, the head of Lloyd's of London. And so she also created the first Pride network in such an old-fashioned industry. I mean, it's so dominated by men. And she just really advocates inclusion and diversity, and really highlights the benefits for businesses to have that diverse cohort. So they're my 3.
Oh, the good 3. What about you, Sophie?
Well, my first one's probably really tradition, bearing in mind my background, which is, Emmeline Pankhurst, Votes for Women. I have a daughter who, when, as she was going off to university and maybe being a little bit subservient and towing the line to people, I'd be saying, Emily Pankhurst did not lie down in front of galloping horses for you to, behave, come on, be strong, and so forth. So I think back in the day, I mean, if you think it was 1918 when women over 30 were allowed to vote, and it wasn't until 1928 that women had equal votes to men. And I think that would be fascinating to go, what at that time made you think you could achieve that? The second person is Claire Short, who was a Labour MP, who I campaigned with to abolish nude women in newspapers. And back in the day, The Sun on page 3 used to have a topless woman. And I remember I was really quite young at the time thinking, this is really unhealthy. How can young girls grow up? How can women grow up if in a daily newspaper we think that is okay to put topless women? And I campaigned from a very early age with her to abolish page 3. And whilst her act didn't succeed, what she did do is raise awareness, as we know, to go on to lead and really help equality. For that, that shouldn't be the case that you have that. And my final person is Rachel Blackmore, who people may not know, but she is a champion jockey. She won the Grand National in 2021, the first female to win the Grand National. She won the leading jockey title at Cheltenham in 2021 as well. And I think to have thought about going into a physical, male-dominated environment as an equal. And what I like in that instance is it's a sport where men and women are equal. Skiing, men and equal, can do it together, and she had them on their own grounds, on their own sort of territory, and did that. And I just think, what a role model. And when they asked her about how does she feel to be the first woman, she said, I don't feel male, I don't feel female, I just feel fantastic. And isn't that what life's all about?
Yeah, love that. Go on, Kylie.
So this is a question we've all been asked quite a few times, right? Who would you have as dinner? So some of these are a back pocket that I've just pulled out, but the first one for me is Vida Goldstein, and she was one of the first women in the world. She's an Australian, one of the first women in the world to stand for national parliament. She never won, but she kept going, and she did it. She ran 5 times. But through all of that, she raised awareness, and then by the 4th time that she'd run, there were another 4 women standing on tickets to run for Parliament. So, but her work was very much about improving those systems that worked better for everybody. So disability platforms, women getting into the workforce, women getting the vote. So, and this was all in 1903. So really early days of that sort of stuff. So she's brilliant. The other one, and selfishly, Oprah Winfrey, because she's got enough money that she could bring the chef to the dinner party, so we'd probably all eat really well. But I watched her shows when I was much younger, back in the early days, but she's shown that you can be powerful, those shoulder pad wearing tough women of the 80s, but you can be human and values driven all at once. The whole bit, she's the whole package, that she's compassionate, but she's also driven. So for me, that was the second person, because I'd love to pick her brain on how she manages that. And the third one, and it's probably a bit sickly sweet, I suppose, but it'd be my mum. So she was born profoundly deaf, her and her brother, in the 1940s in outback Australia, and she had very limited access to educational support. Although she was born to 2 teachers, there was nothing in existence for that. She was only educated to the age of 12, and that was the end of her formal education, because you couldn't go any further when you were deaf. That was it. But she became a strong advocate for people's rights. She runs a bunch of different groups for all of her friends, and she's 86 now, still rides a bike, still goes for coffee, still talks to people about what it's like to be deaf, how to be raised. And she raised 2 children largely on her own as well. So it's more about resilience and determination in the face of adversity for me, and she's been the greatest influence on my life. So they're my 3 who I'd have at dinner, but we'd need to bring an interpreter because my sign language is rubbish these days.
Oh, I love that. That's so lovely. So that's the end of my questions, but thank you all so much. I don't know if you had any parting words. Is there anything else that you wanted to say or share?
No, just turn up.
Yeah, that's
just turn up.
I like Sophie's, you can't beat it if you can't see it.
Yeah.
I really thought that was a great soundbite. I really like that. I've written it down.
We'll get it on t-shirts.
Get on t-shirt.
Thank you so much. That's it for now.
Thanks.
Thanks, Emma.
Bye.